Namaskar, this is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. The biggest story tonight is about the big divorce in India. Foxconn and Vedanta have parted ways. They were to set up a $20 billion semiconductor plant in Gujarat. Now they won't. This should have been a business story, but it's also political and geopolitical because Foxconn is a Taiwanese company. What led to the split? The details are still trickling out. And what does it mean for India's chip dream? We'll discuss that tonight. In Lithuania, a U-turn by the Turkish President Erdogan. He's now supporting Sweden's NATO bid. What did he get in return? We'll tell you. Also, how do the odds stack for Ukraine? Will they get a NATO membership? And since we are asking questions, where is China's foreign minister? Missing for 2 weeks and counting. What is Iran's president doing in Africa? Why is this a crucial week for Sri Lanka? And how many millions did Indians pay for visas they never got? You don't want to miss this. The headlines first. The Kremlin puts France on notice, vows strong response after Paris agrees to supply Kiev with long-range missiles. Russia calls the French decision a mistake and warns of consequences for Ukraine. Are war crimes being committed in the Sudan? Human Rights Watch asks the International Criminal Court to conduct an investigation in Darfur. The group claims the Rapid Support Forces are executing members of an ethnic minority. The army versus the paramilitary conflict has been raging in the Sudan for nearly 3 months now. Big win for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The Parliament of Israel has given the initial nod to his judicial overhaul bill. The bill seeks to curb Supreme Court's powers. Netanyahu's bid to change the justice system has sparked nationwide protests. Saudi Arabia comes to cash-strapped Pakistan's aid once again. Riyadh makes a $2 billion deposit to the State Bank of Pakistan. It's a big boost to Islamabad's abysmally low foreign exchange reserves. This comes ahead of a key IMF meet. And look who's defending free speech. The Taliban wade into the Twitter versus Threads feud. Senior Taliban official says Twitter is better for free speech. The Taliban government uses Twitter to make its announcements. Its accounts are routinely blocked by Threads owner Meta. And Lord Hanuman will be the official mascot of the Asian Athletics Championships. The games start in Thailand tomorrow. Hanuman is one of the most revered gods in India. Around the world, a race is underway. A race to build the most advanced chips, not the snack, but the semiconductors. These chips are the brains of modern-day electronics. They power every gadget that you use. They are a strategic asset. They also make a very lucrative business, an industry worth over $500 billion. Now, India wants a slice of this pie, but India's ambitions have suffered a blow. A major joint venture has collapsed. Vedanta and Foxconn have decided to part ways. They announced a partnership last year, a joint venture. The plan was to set up a factory to manufacture chips. The deal was worth $19.5 billion. Now it has collapsed. The question is why? Why did the deal go sour? India wants to become a hub for building chips. Will this setback hurt New Delhi's plans? That's what we'll discuss tonight, starting with the latest. Foxconn and Vedanta called off their joint venture yesterday. Foxconn is a Taiwanese company, a major electronics manufacturer. Vedanta is an Indian company, a leading natural resources conglomerate. They joined hands in September last year. Foxconn had the expertise in technology. Vedanta understood the raw material needs. It also knew how to operate in India. So it looked like the perfect partnership, at least on paper. Turns out it wasn't. Their joint venture lacked an important ingredient, the know-how of building chips. What they needed was a technology partner, and they did look for one. Reports say a European company had been identified, but the talks remained deadlocked. Apparently, this player wanted more skin in the game. In the end, it did not work out, and the deal fell apart. India's Minister for Electronics and IT spoke about this. His name is Rajiv Chandrasekhar, and this is what he said. I'm quoting, "It was well known that both companies had no prior semiconductor experience or technology and were expected to source fab tech from a tech partner." That did not happen. Vedanta and Foxconn had submitted a proposal. They were seeking permissions for a factory, but without a technology partner, they couldn't move ahead. So the joint venture has collapsed. Now that is the official explanation, but there could be more to this story. Since the joint venture was announced, the plan saw repeated changes. Initially, the state of Maharashtra was chosen to set up the factory. This was in July 2022, but in September, the project was moved to Gujarat. Apparently, they offered better incentives. Then there were regulatory troubles. Last month, Vedanta was fined. India's markets regulator SEBI imposed a penalty. This was over the semiconductor joint venture. SEBI said Vedanta did not disclose its partnership with Foxconn in the right manner. And Vedanta was asked to cough up around $36,000. And now, about 2 weeks later, the whole thing has been called off. So what looked like the perfect deal became a series of hurdles. No partners, no permissions, and now no deal. Like I said, we don't know the full story yet. Vedanta and Foxconn say they want to work independently. India's Communication Minister Ashwini Vaishnav has said, and I'm quoting, both Foxconn and Vedanta are committed to India's semiconductor mission. Vedanta says it has other partners lined up. In fact, let me quote from their statement. We will continue to grow our semiconductor team. India remains pivotal in repositioning global semiconductor supply chains. What about Foxconn? They say they're evaluating their options and they want to establish what they call, and I'm quoting, a diversity of local partners. In fact, let's look at the full statement. Foxconn is committed to India and sees the country successfully establishing a robust semiconductor manufacturing ecosystem. But it doesn't mean the Taiwanese giant is exiting India. They have other operations. Foxconn makes Apple products like iPhones in India. It has a factory in the southern state of Tamil Nadu. Recently, Foxconn said it will make 20 million iPhone units there, plus employ around 100,000 people. Foxconn also has plans to build a new factory in Karnataka. Having said that, these are all assembly plants. India wants to graduate to manufacturing, and it has just the right conditions. So the plans have not been derailed, they say, but they'll certainly be delayed. And to that extent, it is a setback. You see, India is very keen to position itself as a global electronics manufacturing hub. It has just the right conditions, a big market, a large and young workforce, and enough space to accommodate large projects, both physically and politically. For the longest time, China had this advantage, but American sanctions and geopolitical tensions are forcing companies to look for alternatives. And this is where India comes in. This is where India stands a chance. The government senses an opportunity. It wants to attract global players. It is focusing on the production of electronics, both for domestic consumption and for exports. In fact, the government has launched special manufacturing schemes, offered incentives worth over $6 billion. Some projects have already taken off, like the one to make smartphones in India. Companies like Apple have latched onto these incentives. They now want to make 18% of their iPhones in India. Same for chip manufacturing. Similar incentives are on offer. In fact, recently a major deal was announced. US chip maker Micron will set up a plant in India. The project is worth $2.7 billion. So it's all going in the right direction. But what we have so far are small wins. India has not been able to get the big players. Foxconn and Vedanta are parting ways. Intel has not spelled out any clear plans vis-a-vis India. Neither has TSMC, that's Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation. Now, these are the big guns. They will have to be roped in. It's okay to start with assembling electronics, but to win this game, you have to move to manufacturing and eventually to chip design. So this is a setback, and India has a long way to go. The NATO Summit is underway in Lithuania. Yesterday we told you Sweden and Ukraine would dominate affairs. Now you can strike off Sweden, because Turkish President Erdogan has relented. He's agreed to support Sweden's membership. Why? Well, only he can answer that question. The decision was announced late on Monday. The NATO chief held talks with Erdogan and the Swedish Prime Minister. This was a last-ditch effort, and it worked. You see, Turkey had been stalling Sweden's entry since last year. The reasons were mostly political. Sweden is home to a lot of Kurdish migrants. Erdogan calls them terrorists, and his demand was quite simple. Extradite the Kurds, and we'll clear the membership. That's what he wanted. Did Sweden agree? Well, they did amend their constitution, but most of the extraditions were struck down by their courts. So that demand was not fulfilled to send the Kurds back to Turkey. Then yesterday, Erdogan came up with another demand. We will agree only if the European Union gives Turkey membership. So he wanted Turkey to be an EU member. Again, no luck. It did not happen. The EU said those are two separate issues. Which makes you wonder, why did Erdogan agree after all? Well, he could be getting some F-16 jets. These are American jets. Their sale was blocked in 2019 because Turkey bought Russian missiles. But today, the White House cleared it.
It's in the interest of NATO that Turkey get that capability. He has placed no caveats or conditions on that in his public and private comments over the past few months, and he intends to move forward with that transfer in consultation with Congress.
So basically, Erdogan asked for the stars, but he settled for a light bulb. You could say it's a downgrade, but without this brinkmanship, even the F-16 jets were unlikely. Either way, Sweden is a non-issue now. It will become the 32nd member of NATO. But no such luck for Ukraine. NATO is divided on Ukraine's membership. President Zelensky wants to become a de facto member. The NATO chief wants a clear and positive message. And the US is talking about some vague pathway to membership. Listen to this.
When we applied for membership of NATO, we spoke frankly. De facto, Ukraine is already in the alliance. Our weapons are the weapons of the alliance. Our values are what the alliance believes in.
On the membership issue, I also expect that allies will send a clear and positive message on the path forward towards membership for Ukraine.
That the question is not Ukraine and NATO now here at Vilnius. The question is, what's the pathway towards Ukraine's future membership?
For Ukraine, it's all about time. There is no point in saying that Kiev can join 10 years later, or in giving them a checklist that could take 15 years to fulfill. Zelensky wants to join now. Unfortunately, his chances are not good. The US says it's premature for Ukraine to join. Germany says a country at war cannot join. And Hungary says, be rational, don't invite Ukraine. So where does that leave Kiev? In a bit of a limbo. Barring a major surprise, they're not getting a green light in Vilnius. It's politics, so we can't rule it out completely. But logic says no membership for Ukraine. It seems Zelensky has also realized this. Take a look at his statement. This is what he said. It's unprecedented and absurd when time frame is not set either for the invitation or for Ukraine's membership. It seems there is no readiness to invite Ukraine to NATO or to make it a member of the alliance. So what can Zelensky realistically hope for? Words and weapons. Chances are NATO leaders will wax eloquent about shared values and democracy, the usual stuff. They're also expected to announce weapons packages. Germany is preparing a package worth $700 million. It includes ammunition, armored vehicles, and tanks. The US has announced an $800 million package. This one includes the controversial cluster bombs. And France is giving long-range missiles. It's the first time Paris is sending such weapons.
Compte tenu de la situation,
Considering the situation and the counteroffensive led by Ukraine, I decided to increase the deliveries of weapons and equipment and to provide a long-range missile capacity to Ukrainians.
d'avoir justement des capacités de frappe dans la profondeur.
So the message from Vilnius is quite clear. We'll give you moral support. We'll also give you weapons. But we won't give you NATO membership. Unless Biden makes a U-turn like Erdogan, this is where things stand. This whole war was about joining NATO. Ukraine said it wanted to join. Russia said we won't let you join. It's been 500 days and counting since the disagreement triggered this war. Zelensky may say Ukraine is defending human values, but values don't win wars. You see, military operations are not just about the battlefield. They're also about political objectives. Putin's political objective was to turn Ukraine away from NATO. He failed spectacularly. Zelensky's political objective was to join NATO. He too is on the brink of failure, which makes you wonder, who is winning this war? The ones dying on the battlefield or the ones bankrolling the fight? As NATO leaders meet in Europe, a new security challenge is emerging in the Pacific. China is spreading its roots. It may end up with a military base in the Pacific. The Americans are throwing a fit, but the deal is done. A deal between China and the Solomon Islands. They say it's all about police cooperation, but it will have much wider implications. So let me tell you about it. The Prime Minister of the Solomons visited Beijing. His name is Manasseh Sogavare. If you watch this show, you know who he is, China's man in the Pacific. So indebted to Beijing, financially and politically, that he faces the wrath of his own people. Now, this Prime Minister went to meet President Xi Jinping and he heaped praises on China and its leader. Listen to this.
Mr. President, We watch all the bullying that is happening in the world today. And I admire where you stand amidst all those very trying times. And Mr. President, you are taking the lead, and the Solomon Islands and the small island Pacific countries admire the stance that you take. This speaks of the visionary leadership you continue to take on all the issues that is happening in the world today.
He's calling Xi Jinping a visionary. It says a lot about his own political myopia. The Chinese president reciprocated with this announcement.
I am very pleased to jointly announce with you, Mr. Prime Minister, that China and the Solomon Islands will establish a comprehensive strategic partnership featuring mutual respect and common development for a new era. I wish that the two sides will take the occasion of your visit to enhance strategic communication and deepen cooperation in various sectors.
So they have a total of 9 deals now, including the one about policing. They haven't shared the specifics. All we have is a joint statement with some vague proclamations. It says China and the Solomons are building a quote-unquote comprehensive strategic partnership. They've specified 2 areas, law enforcement and security matters. And I have a quote. This is what it says. The Chinese side will continue to provide support and help to Solomon Islands as needed in strengthening Solomon Islands' police law enforcement capacity. Well, this can mean anything, really. Training the police on the Solomon Islands, or working with them on a real-time basis, or perhaps even deploying Chinese security in the Solomons. You know what that means? A Chinese military post in the Pacific. The US is sounding an alarm. It is demanding answers. The US National Security Council issued a statement. It wants the full text of the agreement. And they have good reason to be suspicious because the new deal builds on an earlier pact, a pact that was signed last year. Again, the details are scarce, but some pages of the draft had leaked. They mentioned the PLA and the possibility of a Chinese military base where Chinese soldiers could potentially be deployed in the Pacific. When these details were leaked, the Solomon Islands denied them. But the rebuttal only added to the mistrust, and China's actions did not help. You see, Beijing is making deep inroads in the islands. They already provide police training. They've donated replica guns, at least 22 police vehicles, 30 motorcycles, 8 drones, and riot control equipment like water cannons. This is what China has given the Solomons in the last year. In response, Prime Minister Sogavare had called for deeper security ties with China. In fact, I have his statement from last year. This is what he said. Going forward, I would like to see a more permanent arrangement in place. I think it is prudent that Solomon Islands and the People's Republic of China start discussion on how we can elevate the current joint training arrangement to a more permanent arrangement with clearly defined expected outcomes which aim at ensuring that police have capability in the long term. Those were Sogavare's thoughts last year. And he made his intentions quite clear. He wanted a permanent arrangement with the Chinese. Now he has it. Where does that leave the West, the US and its allies? Where does it leave them? Outmaneuvered by China, and not for the first time. When the Security Pact was signed, it caught the West by surprise. They were not paying attention to the Pacific. The Americans scrambled. Suddenly, after 3 decades, they reopened their embassy in the Solomons. They reached out to regional players with some help from Australia. They even organized a summit, a US-Pacific summit, that Joe Biden ended up missing. But these were all late moves. Now China has a deal that will most likely lead to a military base. In the battle for the Pacific, this round has gone to Beijing. You just saw those pictures from Beijing. Xi Jinping held delegation-level talks with the Solomon Islands. Big, long tables on both sides. Also lots of diplomats and bureaucrats in attendance. But one big name was missing. China's foreign minister, Qin Gang. He should have been part of the Chinese team on Monday, but he was not there. In fact, he's been missing for 2 weeks. His last public appearance was on the 25th of June. He met with officials from Sri Lanka, Russia and Vietnam. Last week, Qin Gang was supposed to host Joseph Borrell. He is the European Union's top diplomat, but the meeting never happened. China postponed it, saying the dates were no longer available. Fishy, right? Well, people started noticing it. Multiple reports emerged questioning Qin Gang's absence. Was he sick? Was he missing? Or was he sidelined? At first, China did not say anything. The foreign ministry claimed it wasn't even aware of such reports. But earlier today, they made a U-turn. Beijing said Qin Gang would not attend the upcoming ASEAN-China meeting. Why? Because of health reasons, they say.
State Councillor and Foreign Minister Qin Gang cannot attend this ASEAN ministerial meeting.
So no Qin Gang. Instead, Wang Yi will represent China. You may remember him, the previous foreign minister, still very powerful in China. He heads the Communist Party's foreign policy wing, which actually makes it a strange equation. When leaders visit Beijing, they meet Qin Gang and Wang Yi. Antony Blinken did this last month. So did Russia's Sergei Lavrov in February. And there's a lot of overlap between these two men. Qin Gang is the government's foreign policy chief, the foreign minister of China. Wang Yi is the Communist Party's foreign policy chief. But in protocol, Wang Yi ranks higher. Why is that? I guess it's party over country in China. Either way, the foreign minister is still on leave. The ASEAN meetings are on Friday, so his absence will last at least 3 weeks. In many ways, this whole incident sums up China and how they operate. You cancel a foreign visit without saying why. You dismiss reports about your top diplomat's health. Then hours later, you confirm all of that with one sentence. Most countries would have just released a statement, perhaps avoided all the speculation, but not China. Their first instinct is to hide and dismiss. And this practice goes right up the command chain. Let's rewind to the Wuhan virus pandemic. By 2021, most world leaders had been vaccinated. In fact, they got their shots on live TV. Guess who did not? Xi Jinping of China. Beijing would not even say if their president was vaccinated or not. It was only in July 2022 that they confirmed it. The obvious question again is why? Why does China keep hiding the health of its leaders? Some experts blame insecurity. Remember, these are unelected presidents and ministers. If they're seen as weak and unhealthy, their position can be challenged. Another reason could be instinct. We've seen it over the years. China's government first hides, then it blames others. We saw it with the pandemic. We also saw it during the recent spy balloon saga. So nothing to be surprised here, but it will be interesting to see when Qin Gang returns. He took over as a foreign minister last year. Before that, he was China's ambassador to the US. Rumor is he's a fierce wolf warrior. So aggression and insults come naturally to him. If only transparency came just as easily, we could have avoided this mess. Either way, we'll be looking out for his next appearance. Vantage continues after a short break.
पास था वहां से 2500 गाड़ियों को भी निकाल लिया गया है और जो कसोल में है उसमें आज शाम तक उस रास्ते को हम खोलने की कोशिश करेंगे। मैं कह सकता हूं कि जितना अगर बारिश नहीं हुई तो कल तक हम सारे पर्यटकों को उनके घर तक पहुंचाने में पूरी सहायता करेंगे।
सुखू जी, ये भी बता दीजिए कि कितना नुकसान हुआ है दोनों तरफ से, आदमी को भी और प्रॉपर्टी को भी कितना नुकसान हुआ है? क्या आपकी सरकार के पास कुछ अंदाजा है, कुछ एस्टिमेट है कि कितना नुकसान हुआ है?
Our next story is from Sri Lanka, and this is a very important week for them. The first anniversary of the anti-Rajapaksa protest. You may remember these pictures. The presidential palace in Colombo was overrun. Protesters were lounging inside. Then President Gotabaya Rajapaksa was on the run. That was a tricky moment for Sri Lanka. It was a 50-50 situation. Anything could have happened. The country could have descended into absolute anarchy, or it could have rebuilt with patience. Thankfully, the latter happened. Sri Lanka is on the road to recovery. It's not like the economy is booming, but at least there is political and social stability, and India has played a key role in that. New Delhi gave Sri Lanka assistance worth $4 billion. It also batted for Colombo at the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. So it's now time for the next step, to rebuild the economy. India's Foreign Secretary Vinay Quatra landed in Colombo on Monday. His mission is twofold. One, to review the progress of Indian projects. And two, chart out President Ranil Wickremesinghe's trip to India. He is expected to arrive later this month on the 21st of July. It's his first trip to India after taking office last year. Quite the delay, in fact. He was invited by Foreign Minister Jaishankar in January, but for 6 months the trip did not happen. Now, Wickremesinghe is no stranger in New Delhi. He's been Prime Minister 5 times. He's engaged with multiple Indian governments in the past, but this time the stakes are much higher. So what does the Sri Lankan president hope to achieve? Well, two things. One is getting money from India, and two, addressing India's concerns about China. Let's deal with the first one first. Sri Lanka needs financial support. The restructuring of loans. It is hoping for Indian investment, especially in energy, power and ports, and these are all crucial sectors. Both sides are keen on Trincomalee. It's a city in northeastern Sri Lanka. It is already home to a harbour. India and Sri Lanka are looking to convert it into a major port. On Sunday, an Indian diplomat in Colombo promised to keep supporting Sri Lanka. He said India will play a constructive role. So that's one agenda item. Wickremesinghe's second job is on China, to convince New Delhi of its position. Colombo says it is not interested in camp politics. It wants to be neutral between India and China. But will India accept that? The Chinese have not abandoned their plans in Sri Lanka. They're back in the mix. Companies like China Harbour Corp and Sinopec are eyeing investments. Sinopec has already been shortlisted for a project, a $4 billion refinery near Hambantota. The fact is, Colombo needs China's help. Around 20% of their debt is owed to Beijing. So without them, there is no restructuring or rebuilding, and China knows that too. All of Sri Lanka's creditors have created a joint forum, sort of like a single window to renegotiate the debt. But guess who's staying away? The Chinese. They have refused to join the other creditors. They want to work out their own deal. It's fishy even by China's standards. So Wickremesinghe needs to convince New Delhi about the China factor. And all of this discussion is based on a very important assumption. The assumption that Sri Lanka will recover. Other countries can only help. In the end, Sri Lanka will have to do the heavy lifting. And there's a problem. A lot of Sri Lankans are leaving the country. Around 150,000 Sri Lankans have left since January. The government says 300,000 people will have left by the end of this year, 2023. It's an exodus. Many of these people are going to Gulf countries, and the result is this. There is a labor shortage in Sri Lanka. Doctors, nurses, engineers, construction workers, all of them are in short supply. And without them, recovery will be tough. We talked about ports and refinery projects. You need people to build and operate them. So this brain drain and this loss of labor could derail the rebuilding process. What can Colombo do? They've already announced a plan to restructure domestic debt. The next step is to negotiate with foreign lenders. If all goes well, the IMF will help them. A $3 billion bailout has been struck. After a review in September, that money could be released. It's all about speed and time now. Wickremesinghe says it will be a long and hard road to recovery. But will his people stay around for the bitter pill? Now to Africa, a continent with a lot of potential, unlimited resources, an untapped market and a young demographic. Africa has all of it. The world was late to realize this, but now they've woken up to the fact. China was the first. It invested billions and lured African nations into a debt trap. Then there were the others, the United States, Europe, even India, all looking to enhance their ties with Africa. But now the continent has an unlikely suitor. The Islamic Republic of Iran, their president is making a beeline for Africa. His name is Ibrahim Raisi. And he will embark on a rare tour. He will visit Kenya, Uganda and Zimbabwe. It's the first trip by an Iranian president to Africa in 11 years, so clearly it's being talked about. But what is Raisi doing there? Why does he want to go to Africa? Why is Iran suddenly courting Africa? You see, the Iran of today is an isolated country, both politically and economically. There are sanctions imposed by America, a battered economy, the protests last year, and its waning influence in West Asia. So the regime has come up with a new strategy, diplomacy. Tehran is engaging with friends. It is also engaging with its enemies. Basically, it's doing everything it can to forge alliances. Case in point, Africa. In March this year, President Raisi hosted a meeting with African representatives. He pitched Iran as a different kind of partner, different from the typical colonial West. And now he's touring the continent. The obvious focus is trade. Iran and Africa have a robust bilateral trade. It was just over $1.2 billion last year. This is a 107% rise from 2021, but it's not enough, far from it. Tehran's footprint in Africa pales in comparison to its neighbors, the likes of Saudi Arabia and Turkey. Look at the numbers. In 2021, Turkey's Africa trade, the bilateral trade, was over $34 billion. So clearly, Iran has a long way to go. Same for diplomatic presence. Currently, Tehran has less than 20 embassies in Africa. Compare that to Turkey. They have embassies in 44 African nations. So there's a lot of catching up to do. And it won't be easy. Not all African nations trust Tehran. Morocco, for instance, cut diplomatic ties in 2018. Relations with Egypt have been rocky. And these are two economic powerhouses in Africa. And Tehran knows that. So it's waving the white flag. In June, Iran's foreign minister issued a statement. He said they're willing to restore ties with both Morocco and Egypt. It's not clear when that will happen, but Iran sounds desperate. Look at their recent moves. On the 8th of July, Raisi met the Algerian foreign minister. He talked about boosting ties. Last week, Iran became a member of the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, a group that includes Russia, India, and China. In June, Raisi set out on a tour of Latin America. He visited Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba. And now he's going to Africa, pushing for stronger ties. That's a lot of engagements and travel in 2 months. Iran calls it a new policy of openness, but the world sees it for what it is: economic and political compulsions. Iran goes to polls next year. It will be a big test for Raisi's regime. He came to power with a promise to fix the economy, and look at what he's achieved. Rampant inflation and a falling rial. That's the Iranian currency. It's falling. So they need an economic boost, and for that, they need the world to help them. Hence the outreach. Deals with Latin America and Africa will help. If it works out, it's like hitting two birds with a stone. Iran will save its economy and reclaim some space in global politics. Now let's talk about beauty pageants. Have you ever watched one? Did you find it fun, sexist, or outdated? Well, whatever your answer is, you don't need to love beauty pageants to have heard of Miss Universe. It's not only a big one, but it also makes the boldest claim, the boldest of all beauty contests. It wants to single out one person who will represent an idealized vision of womanhood. And this story is about that last word, womanhood. Because in a first, a transgender woman has won the title of Miss Netherlands. And with this, she's qualified for the Miss Universe contest. Is this a welcome change? Our next story explores.
This is Ricky Cole, a 22-year-old Dutch woman who's won the title of Miss Netherlands. And in doing so, she has made history because she is a transgender woman. And the first to ever win this pageant contest, meaning the first winner to wear this tiara without being a naturally born female. So, as expected, this year's title invited mixed reactions. There was a wave of harsh criticism. Many called the pageant anti-feminist for letting a trans woman compete with naturally born women. Some demanded segregation, saying trans people should participate in trans beauty pageants. Others simply used barf emojis, or one-word adjectives like gross to describe how they felt. Overall, the very criteria of choosing contestants came into question, saying that the lines have become blurry. But then there were others who hailed the inclusivity of this pageant. For them, Cole's win is a landmark moment for trans rights. They say it increased visibility of trans people and champions their success. But does giving a trans woman this award say much for equality? Not really. It doesn't balance anything out, especially as hate crimes targeting transgender people are increasing. They rocketed by 56% last year compared to 2021. So a fleeting victory in a beauty pageant doesn't do much to change this number. But for advocates of queer rights, Cole's win is a step forward and part of the bigger picture of change. Miss Netherlands is part of the Miss Universe contest, Because Cole has won Miss Netherlands, she will now go on to represent her country in Miss Universe later this year. But she won't be the first trans woman to do so. In 2018, Angela Pons from Spain became the pageant's first trans contestant, and she won Miss Spain. This was 6 years after the pageant allowed trans contestants, a move that was finalized after a queer advocacy NGO began talks with Miss Universe pageant.
A lot more than a beauty competition for the transgender community. It's a community that does not face equal opportunities when it comes to housing, medical care, or even safety.
This move changed the landscape of beauty pageants, and the biggest push came last year when a Thai transgender business mogul bought Miss Universe organization, becoming the first woman to own the pageant.
For Miss Universe, that is the global platform. I would rather say it's the universe platform, actually. Much bigger than Thailand, that I can have my own voice, my statement, my opinion, the perspective, and the courage to talk to everyone. The inspiration, and I can become the aspiration for so many people, particularly women, LGBTQ, that they can transform.
The times seem to be changing, but the debate remains the same. Should trans women be allowed to compete with naturally born women, be it beauty pageants or sports? Some say trans women get unfair advantage, that they steal the victory from non-trans competitors. But others disagree. They say trans women are also women. So while Miss Netherlands crowned a trans woman, it doesn't conclude the debate. What do you think about it?
For our next story, let's talk about rejection. Whether in relationships or careers, rejection hurts. But when visa applications are rejected, the bite can be brutal. Not only because dreams of sunbathing by the ocean or hiking in mountain trails are squashed, but also because when visa applications are denied, it costs you money. And what price do Indians pay? About $10 million. Last year, Indians spent $10 million on Schengen visas. The visas they never got. I'll tell you what I'm talking about, but first, what's a Schengen visa? What is Schengen? It's an area comprising 27 countries in Europe. Countries like Germany, Switzerland, and France. Now, to visit these countries, some non-Europeans, including Indians, need what's called the Schengen visa. It's a visa issued by one Schengen state, and then it's valid for traveling in any of the other 26 countries in the area. Now, we Indians love visiting Europe, so we apply for the visa. And last year, we loved the Schengen a little too hard. The visa saw a steep rise in applications from India, a 415% rise since pre-pandemic times. About 670,000 visa applications were filed by Indians, but more than 100,000 visas out of these were refused. That's a rejection rate of 18%. Feels like unrequited love, doesn't it? But let me tell you, this number is lower than the rate of 2021. In that year, 2021, the rejection rate was more than 23%. So is this cause for celebration? Not really. 18% is still higher than the worldwide average rejection rate, which stands at 17.9%. Not a big difference there, but it does matter because this rejection costs you money. When you apply for a visa, you're charged a fee. For the Schengen visa application, this amount is about $87. So Indians collectively have spent about $58 million on these applications last year. And when applications got rejected, Indians lost about $10 million. So much money lost to trips that never happened. The numbers do not look good. And if I put this into perspective, they will look worse. India got the second highest Schengen visa rejections in the world, second only to Algeria. In Algeria, in the case of Algeria, about 46% of the visas were turned down. It is brutal, but also not limited to Schengen by any means. Visas to countries like the US and the UK are also a pain point for many Indians. So why do these applications get rejected? For a number of reasons, like hiding your criminal background or submitting false information. But there's always more to it. A factor that does not help India's case, the strength of its passport. Because when it comes to passports, with great power comes a lot of travel. Meaning, the stronger the passport, the more countries you can visit, ideally without a visa. Japan has the world's strongest passport. The citizens of Japan can visit a whopping 193 countries without a visa. This is followed by Singapore and South Korea, where citizens can get access to 192 countries. And what is India's rank? 85th. India enjoys visa-free or visa-on-arrival travel to 59 countries. And the 85th rank looks poor, but let me tell you, it's an improvement. A slow and steady one, but an improvement for sure. It's also a sign of the changing times. Supporting the travelling Indians who are raring to go. In less than a decade, the government of India has issued more than 88 million fresh passports. And this trajectory is helping not just Indians. Visas also say a lot about engagement between countries. When Indians get visas, they engage with the countries they travel to. When Indians travel abroad, they help international economies. Indians spent over $12 billion on foreign travel last year, $12 billion in a year. And yet, getting a visa in India can be an unpleasant experience with a months-long wait and hectic documentation like proof of employment, your income and tax returns. All of this with no guarantee of success. Getting a visa is a gamble. Many are willing to play, but the question is, should they have to? And now let's move from foreign lands to the deep blue sea. A new calamity is gearing up to affect our oceans. We're talking about deep sea mining. There's an urgent meeting taking place in the Caribbean island nation of Jamaica. It's to decide the fate of mining on our ocean floors. The clock is ticking. Countries want to start scouring the ocean floor for rare metals. But they need permission, a set of rules and regulations. You see, no nation controls the oceans. So its regulation is up to the UN. But as the UN scrambles to figure out what to do, more and more countries are insisting on a moratorium on deep-sea mining. Our next report tells you why.
The world is over 70% ocean. You learn about this at a young age. But how much do we really know about our oceans? We know a bit about the ocean surface, but we've barely scratched the surface when it comes to the ocean floor. There are a few things we know for sure, though. One is that the deep sea is a fragile ecosystem, and two, it is full of minerals. We'll talk about the minerals and their potential in a bit. Before that, we would like to ask, would you disturb a fragile ecosystem, one you barely know anything about, for economic benefits? You don't know what will happen if the ecosystem gets damaged. You don't know how to fix anything that goes wrong. So, would you still go ahead with disturbing things in such a delicate situation? It seems so, because that's what some countries and companies want to do with the deep sea mining. As we said, the ocean floor is known to have minerals, metals like cobalt, nickel, and manganese. These are metals that go into making electric vehicle batteries and other green technologies. And they're reportedly just lying about the sea floor, in the form of potato-shaped rocks, apparently. Sounds like an easy solution to all our green energy problems, doesn't it? That's what the advocates of deep ocean mining are saying. They want permission to start picking up these rocks. And they're pitching this as a solution for climate change. Yes, we aren't making this up. Those wanting to mine the deep sea say it's less harmful than mining on land. There's no proof of this, of course, because, like we mentioned, we don't know much about the deep sea. And, very conveniently, no one has made any promises to stop mining on land. It basically sounds like people trying to exploit yet another area of our planet. The consequences be damned. But despite the obvious risks, we're approaching a pivotal moment. The next few days could determine the future of deep-sea mining. It's because of a chain of events set off by a mining company and a Pacific island. The Canadian conglomerate, the Metals Company, and the tiny island nation of Nauru. It's an island nation with no capital city, one major road, and about 12,000 people. In 2021, Nauru put in a request to mine the deep sea in partnership with the Metals Company. It filed the request with the International Seabed Authority, which has authority in these matters. It's a UN body based out of Jamaica. Now, since this was the first time a country actively wanted to mine the ocean floor, the ISA didn't have a plan. But it was on a timer to come up with new regulations, a 2-year timer that expired on Sunday. But the ISA still doesn't know what to do. Over the last few days and months, more and more countries and companies have come out against the proposal.
I want to be very clear here. France will honor its commitments and remain true to what I have already said, which is why France supports a ban on all deep-sea mining. I take this position and I will bring it to the international fora.
France, Germany, Costa Rica and a host of others are against deep-sea mining, as are businesses including BMW, Google and Samsung. They want the ISA to impose a moratorium or ban on mining, at least for a few years while we wait for more scientific research. Meanwhile, there are countries like the UK, China, Russia and India that have been exploring the seas, checking to see if it makes sense to begin deep-sea mining. Now, all eyes are on the International Seabed Authority. In the next few weeks, we'll know whether a new gold rush is on the cards, and if our oceans, like our land, will be at the mercy of human greed.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. We're starting with Israel. The country's parliament has given its initial nod to Prime Minister Netanyahu's judicial overhaul plan, and this has triggered protests in several parts of the country. Meanwhile, a volcano has erupted in southwest Iceland. This happened after an intense earthquake activity in the area, and heavy rain has caused floods in the US state of Vermont. Finally, taking you back in history, on this day in the year 2006, a string of powerful explosions happened in India's financial capital, Mumbai. The blasts took place in local trains during evening rush hour. Nearly 200 people were killed and about 900 were injured. 9 years later, 5 convicts were given the death sentence. We're leaving you with that. Thanks for watching.
Trouble, and you'll find various such spots in the entire state where rains have collapsed, and we have spoken to a few people here. They are saying that they have never seen such situation in last 40 to 50 years in this state of Himachal Pradesh. So this is the situation, this is the ground situation here which we are bringing to you from Shimla district of Himachal Pradesh.
The death toll has now crossed 70 in the hill state of Himachal Pradesh. Streets are waterlogged, highways are jammed because of landslides, and many bridges have been washed away. The army and the NDRF have ramped up relief and rescue operations. Prime Minister Modi took stock of the situation, held talks with the chief ministers of Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand. He's also assured all possible help from the centre. So joining us now is Sukhwinder Sukhu, who is the chief minister of Himachal Pradesh. बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद हमारे साथ जुड़ने के लिए. अभी हिमाचल प्रदेश में क्या हालात हैं, कौन-कौन से जिले जो सबसे अफेक्टेड है, और ये भी बता दीजिए कि फिलहाल स्थिति क्या है, बाढ़ और बारिश की वजह से क्या स्थिति है ऑन ग्राउंड पर, खासकर ये जो कुल्लू मनाली जो हाईवे है उसमें क्या स्थिति है?
मनाली का यातायात को खोल दिया है। बारिश रुके सिर्फ 8 घंटे हुए हैं। 8 घंटों में हमने जितने स्लाइड थे उनको हटा दिया गया है और ट्रैफिक को वन वे कर दिया गया है। यानी कि ट्रैफिक जो है मनाली से चंडीगढ़ की तरफ जाने के लिए खोल दिया गया है और मनाली की तरफ आने के लिए अभी हमने ट्रैफिक को रोक दिया है, ताकि जितने भी गाड़ियां 5000 के करीब गाड़ियां हैं, ट्रेवल्स है, बोलो बसेस है, उनको अतिशीघ्र चंडीगढ़ की तरफ भेजा जाए। तो उस दृष्टिकोण से मैं खुद उसका जायजा ले रहा हूँ और अभी हमारा जो ओट के पास था वहां से 2500 गाड़ियों को भी निकाल लिया गया है और जो कसोल में है उसमें आज शाम तक उस रास्ते को हम खोलने की कोशिश करेंगे। मैं कह सकता हूं कि जितना अगर बारिश नहीं हुई तो कल तक हम सारे पर्यटकों को उनके घर तक पहुंचाने में पूरी सहायता करेंगे।
सुखू जी, ये भी बता दीजिए कि कितना नुकसान हुआ है दोनों तरफ से, आदमी को भी और प्रॉपर्टी को भी कितना नुकसान हुआ है? क्या आपकी सरकार के पास कुछ अंदाजा है, कुछ एस्टिमेट है कि कितना नुकसान हुआ है?
देखिए 50 साल बाद बारिश ने
A very warm welcome. You're watching Breaking on News 18. I'm Akanksha Swaroop. Let's dive into the segment. We have some breaking inputs coming in as far as the Congress party is concerned. Now, the Congress has claimed vindication after the Supreme Court's order that struck down the extensions given to the ED chief as illegal. And Congress leader Surjewala has taken to Twitter and said that this is a victory of justice. This is a vindication of our stand on brazen misuse and compromise of ED for political vendetta by the Modi government for targeting political opponents as also businessmen to spread terror. Now, Surjewala has further said that ED has lost all credibility except as a puppet in the hands of BJP government for settling personal scores, tarnishing democracy and to bring down elected governments. A big news coming in as far as the Supreme Court order is concerned. The Congress government, of course, has claimed that this is an indictment of the Modi government. For more details, let's quickly go across to Pallavi Ghosh, who's joining me on the phone line. Pallavi, going by what the Supreme Court order has to say, that all actions taken by the ED after 17th of November 2021 become illegal, null and void. What does this mean now? Is the Congress also demanding an independent investigation?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Both the Trinamool Congress as well as the Congress party, and particularly Randeep Surjewala, who had moved that petition in the Supreme Court, is actually claiming victory. As we all know, the ED and the opposition parties have a very uneasy equation, with the opposition parties often accusing the ED of being misused by the central government to target their political opponents. So in this, of course, they are sniffing victory, and that's the point that they are making, that we stand vindicated. We have raised this issue in the courts, and the court has taken cognizance of that. And therefore, there should be an apology which should definitely come in from the central government. And more importantly, many of the steps which are taken by the Enforcement Directorate, particularly as far as opposition party members are concerned, that should become now null and void.
At the same time, Pallavi, Surjewala has said that we had hoped that the Supreme Court would strike down the law which allows such abuses of the process to take place. But for now, the Supreme Court has let it stand. Could you throw more light on what is the law that he's talking about?
He's basically talking about this whole system of the extension of the tenure which was given to ED, and something which is there in the hands of the central government. The government can decide on the appointment of the ED director, and in fact also overcome and bypass any voice of dissent, which in this case did come in from Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary and Mr. Mallikarjun Kharge, because they're the leader of the opposition. And that's the point that they're making, is that there has to be a complete consensus whenever their appointment of these sensitive designations are concerned. That is what they were hoping, that the Supreme Court would intervene on that, but the Supreme Court clearly hasn't completely. But for now, whatever measure which has been pointed out, that the CBI director the ED director can only be in office till 31st of July. That is being seen as a win-win as far as opposition parties are concerned.
All right. In fact, Pallavi, I'm going to request you to continue staying with us, because our next story will also need your input. And we have some breaking inputs with regards to the GST. There has been a proposed 28% GST implementation on online gaming, including lottery, casino, horse racing, but the government and finance minister Nirmala Sitharaman made it amply clear that this would not hurt the industry and that the attempt is not to shut down or hurt the gaming industry. In fact, she says that states like Sikkim and Goa depend on these apps and games for their economy and revenue. The government does not plan to even restrict or discourage these games. This would need amendment in the GST Act, which the government will do soon. Let's quickly go back to Pallavi. Pallavi, but the question still remains, how will the gaming industry be impacted by this 28% GST proposal?
Well, I mean, 28% is a huge GST which is going to be applied. And that's not just on gaming apps, but simple things like lottery, as far as, the horse racing is concerned, casinos are concerned. And when this question was specifically asked of the finance minister, are you trying to curtail or discourage this kind of an industry? She said it very categorically that there are states like Sikkim and Goa which depend on this. So we don't want to curtail it, we don't want to discourage, but we also want to make them taxable. That's essentially what is happening. They come under a tax net, which means the GST 28% will now be applicable on them.
Right. At the same time, Pallavi, important to differentiate that the finance minister, in fact, the entire finance ministry is of the view that there should be no differentiation when it comes to earnings, whether from games of skill or whether of games of chance.
Yes. And in fact, for a specific question, the finance minister made it very clear that whether it's casinos, whether they are lotteries, whether they are horse racing, we do not consider them to be illegal activities. We also don't think that they should be checked or discouraged, because we also acknowledge the fact that there are certain states which earn their income from them, and she specifically mentioned as an example Goa as well as Sikkim. But we also cannot have a situation that they cannot be taxed, so they have to be brought under a GST purview, which means the earnings which the particular state gets in, or whichever industry or whichever vendor is there, they will have to pass on a part of it to the central government or to a state government, as the case may be, by virtue of the 28% GST. But I think with this announcement of the GST net on them, it's also an acknowledgement by the central government. And she said that. It's an acknowledgement by the central government that these are those apps which are very much here to stay. They are illegal, perfectly legitimate, and they are important for the economic growth story of small states like Goa as well as Sikkim.
Absolutely. And what remains interesting is the fact that the finance ministry has made it amply clear that they do not want to end the gaming industry. We'll have to leave this conversation at that. Many thanks to you, Pallavi, for sharing those precious inputs. In fact, there's some disturbing news coming in about 120 Israelis who may be stranded due to recent rains and flooding in northeastern states of India. This according to Israel's foreign ministry, according to Israel's consulate in New Delhi. The problem comes primarily from damaged communications infrastructure and lack of reception. The foreign ministry, along with other actors on the ground, are undertaking efforts to reach the travelers. This as has been confirmed by the Foreign Ministry of Israel. For more details, our international news correspondent Abhishek Jha joins me on the phone line. Abhishek, we do believe that the communication has been significantly hampered due to the rain fury and the floods lashing the state. But what are we learning so far as these Israelis are concerned?
So far, about 120, in fact, more than some of the local media reports in Israel suggest that about be very well stranded in these states, especially in Himachal, the upper areas. Manali happens to be one of the hot spots of Israeli tourists, and a lot of Israelis, youngsters come there to spend time for weeks. They come, and this used to be the peak touristic season. And the sudden flash flood that has almost disconnected entire Himachal Pradesh and its various smaller pockets to the main road and the highways. Communications line having disrupted, electricity is being disrupted, and that is also leading to not having a facility to recharge the basic mobile phone that these tourists might be handling. So clearly, the communication line, the infrastructure to travel, these are the reason why so many people or the tourists from different parts of the country as well, they are also stranded in various parts of Himachal, Punjab, or Uttarakhand, and government are trying to reach out to them and to ensure that they have the basic amenities of life. And now the rain is receding. We are expecting that maybe in the next 24 to 48 hours, the situation will improve. Some of the communication line may be established, or people may have some means or some longer routes also even available to reach out to a place from where they can communicate. But still, the embassy is trying to track down all these people and reach out to them with all the amenities essential.
All right, many thanks to you, Abhishek Jha, for bringing in all the latest details. And we have some news coming in from Bengaluru. In a shocker from Bengaluru, the CEO and managing director of a tech firm was allegedly killed by an ex-employee. Phanindra Subramania, the managing director, and Vinu Kumar, the CEO of the Aeronix internet company, were allegedly killed by a former employee who barged into their office and attacked them with a sword. This is a confirmation that has come in from Bengaluru police. Let's also listen in to some inputs.
Double murder horror has been reported in Bengaluru, where the MD and CEO of Aeronix internet company, which is Bengaluru-based company, were brutally murdered by the ex-employees. Now, this has shook the people here in the city, as this whole murder took place in the broad daylight and while the other employees were working at the spot. Now, what we are also given to understand from the police is that the case has been registered at Amruthalli police station and the investigation is now on. But meanwhile, the forensic team has also reached to the spot, trying to collect all those evidence of how this whole murder took place. But on the other hand, what we are also given to understand from the police is that as they were working together in the company earlier on Banarghatta Road, and as that the MD and the CEO of Aeronix internet company, they came out of that particular company and went on to establish their own venture, and this was seen as in the rival business altogether.
Now over to the national capital. Heavy rainfall and a surging Yamuna river have caused flooding in Delhi, posing risks to residents in low-lying areas. Yamuna is currently flowing above the danger mark. Evacuation advisories have also been issued and all MCD schools are closed as a precautionary measure. Delhi's Lieutenant Governor V.K. Saxena visited one of the worst-hit areas, Yamuna Bazar, to take stock of the situation. He attacked the Aam Aadmi Party government, saying that the main reason behind waterlogging is inadequate cleaning of sewage drains and untreated rainwater. Aam Aadmi Party Minister Saurabh Bharadwaj has hit back at the Lieutenant Governor, saying that Gujarat was flooded with just 30 mm of rainfall. He added that the LG stayed for 30 years in Gujarat, but he never advised the Gujarat government. Meanwhile, another road caved in near India Gate today. This is a third such incident in the national capital.
की जनता वाटर लॉगिंग से परेशान है। ये एक हर साल का रिचुअल बनकर चला रहा है। जो सीवेज की क्लीनिंग होनी चाहिए वो नहीं होती है। जो ड्रेन वाटर को हार्वेस्ट करना चाहिए या उसको प्रॉपर ट्रीट करना चाहिए वो नहीं हो रहा है। सालों साल से जो नहीं हुआ है उसकी वजह से हर वक्त वाटर लॉगिंग होती है। यमुना की डिसिल्टिंग रेगुलर होनी चाहिए जिससे कि उसकी वाटर होल्डिंग कैपेसिटी बढ़े। नजफगढ़ ड्रेन की डिसिल्टिंग रेगुलर होनी चाहिए जिसकी वजह से उसकी वाटर होल्डिंग कैपेसिटी बढ़े। ये सब चीजें ना होने की वजह से आज दिल्ली के अंदर जगह जगह पर पानी भरा हुआ है। ये दुखद है और मेरी कोशिश होगी कि इन सब चीजों पर ध्यान दिया जाए जिससे कि हर साल जो दिल्ली की जनता को ये तकलीफें झेलनी पड़ती हैं।
As far as the situation in Delhi is concerned, by when do you think the threat of floods will be over? Do you see that as a threat anymore?
I think this water which is raising the levels of Yamuna is not the rainfall which we are getting in Delhi. It is basically the water which is coming from Haryana, Himachal, Uttarakhand, and there have been heavy rainfalls there, and it is very difficult to predict because right now it is around 360,000 cusecs water which we are receiving, and it may go to 5 lakhs. There is no imminent threat for the people per se in Delhi. The only vulnerable population was those JJ clusters or small shanties which were built on the banks of River Yamuna. They are around 41,000 people and they are being evacuated. For the rest of the population, those who reside in the city, there is no threat.
Delhi CM Arvind Kejriwal has assured about several sort of arrangements given that Yamuna is actually flowing above the danger mark, and has assured people and in fact has asked not to worry.
there are areas where water has entered in the household, and in fact I'm standing in one such house where water has in fact entered, and you can see in the visuals, in fact these people have been asked to vacate the area, but they are saying that they are living here since years and now it is very difficult to shift the all items and the essential needs. I'll try to talk to the person. पानी कब आया आपके?
पानी जी कल से मतलब सुबह से स्टार्ट हो गया आना 10 बजे से। हाँ। बढ़ गया मतलब धीरे धीरे एकदम से तेज से बढ़ा, अब भी बढ़ रहा तो अब धीरे धीरे बढ़ा बिल्कुल।
तो इस ये जो कमरा है हम देख रहे हैं इसमें पानी है, तो आया है, तो इसमें सामान था पलंग वलंग था वो गीला हो गया, अब इसको बाहर निकाला हमने, 2 घंटे सामान निकालने में लग गए। पिछले साल भी हमारा बहुत सामान नुकसान हुआ था, घाट में कीचड़ हो गया था, 5 से 10 हजार रुपए लगे हमें पूरा घाट साफ कराने, पर्सनल हम अपने पैसे दे के साफ कराते हैं इस घाट को पूरा। प्रशासन से क्या कुछ कहा गया है, क्या कुछ मदद का भरोसा है?
प्रशासन ने अभी बोट के अंदर आया था, अलर्ट करा था उन्होंने कि पानी आने वाला है, छोटे बच्चों को नजदीक अपने घाट के किनारे पे ना जाने दे और अपने सामान की देख रखें और नदी से थोड़ा दूरी रहें।
तो आपसे ये बोला गया कि इलाका खाली कर दो?
अभी इलाका खाली करने के लिए तो नहीं बोला, बाकी कल वो आए थे, क्या नाम है तुम्हारे पुलिस वाले, वो बोल के गए थे कि पानी बढ़ेगा।
With monsoon season, the Delhi NCR region is in fact brought to knees by the heavy rain that is being experienced by the people in Delhi NCR. And with the problems, we are seeing that the traffic, the waterlogging and also the road that has in fact been caved in. There have in fact been incidences where there have been reported how there are in Rohini and Janakpuri earlier there were road that was caved in because of the heavy rain. Now in the central Delhi itself you can see this is C hexagon near India Gate where the portion of the road has in fact been caved in over here, and the entire region, this entire part has in fact been barricaded now at the moment by the Delhi police, and the traffic police has also in fact put in a tweet saying that this road should be avoided at the moment because the work will start. But this is what is happening. In fact, we have been seeing since the monsoon session, since the monsoon season has started, there has in fact been incidences of how there have been such road caves in, waterlogging everywhere, most of the region, and we are seeing how the parties are in fact indulged in blame game. The BJP and the Congress have in fact been attacking the Aam Aadmi Party of not really working with the MCD, with the PWD to ensure that the state is in fact ready for the monsoon season. And now it is in fact the commuters, it is the common man like you and me who are suffering because of the unpreparedness that we are seeing on ground.
We are currently present inside the Pragati Maidan tunnel, which is now closed for 4 days, and the efforts are currently being made to remove the water at the earliest. At the same time, you can see that this is the place which is completely filled with water, and this is also one such reason as to why no commuter is allowed to enter or pass through this tunnel. And this is one such particular place which connects many of the other central parts of the national capital Delhi, but because of the water logging inside this particular tunnel, no movement is allowed. But it has been closed to 4 days since this tunnel has been closed, and now you can see that there is tractor as well, but we cannot see any of the movement. On the other side, the LG of the Delhi, Mr. VK Saxena, he is currently on a visit in the national capital Delhi. He has currently visited the danger level areas which are currently flooded by the Yamuna river. On the other side, this is his second visit in the capital city where he is currently taking stock of the situation. He is currently accompanied by all the concerned officers, and in fact the Chief Secretary of the National Capital Delhi, Naresh Kumar, he is also along with him. After inspecting situation on the banks of the river Yamuna in the national capital Delhi, the Delhi Lieutenant Governor VK Saxena is now taking stock of the situation at the Pragati Maidan tunnel. He is currently along with the CS Chief Secretary Naresh Kumar as well, and they are currently speaking to all the officials. You can now see on the screen of CNN News 18 that LG Saxena is moving forward. He is currently taking the stock of the overall preparation, the planning as well, and also speaking to all the officials. In fact, we have seen that he has also scolded the officials for the poor planning. In the visual, you can see that he is currently on a visit in the national capital Delhi. A while back, he was at the Yamuna bank area where the water level has already crossed the danger major mark in the national capital Delhi. There are also chances of the flood, so the preparation needs to be taken in the advance. And now you can see in the visuals that as of now the situation is currently being analyzed by all the officials of the Delhi government. Remember, this is a particular place which connects a proper it in fact gives a proper connectivity to the commuters moving to the other side of the national capital Delhi.
All right, so those were reports giving you a ground zero sense of the national capital. But here we bring you more reports from Mandi, Punjab and Haryana. Let's have a quick look.
इस वक्त हम मौजूद हैं हिमाचल प्रदेश में छोटी काशी कहे जाने वाले मंडी जिले में, जहां पर मेरे ठीक पीछे ये बहने वाली व्यास नदी कल अपने उफान पर थी। और उसकी बड़ी वजह ये थी कि पंडोह डैम के भर जाने की वजह से चारों गेटों को खोल दिया गया था, जिसके बाद ये जो व्यास नदी है प्रचंड वेग के साथ उफान लिए हुए आगे बढ़ती चली गई। और उसके बाद ये बढ़ते बढ़ते पानी यहाँ ऊंचाई तक आ गया था। और वो जो छत आप देख रहे हैं, ये पहली छत, वो पूरी तरीके से डूब चुका था। और ये पानी अगर वहां देखें तो रिहायशी इलाकों में भर गया था और वहां एसडीआरएफ और एनडीआरएफ को तैनात किया गया था। रास्ता पूरी तरीके से ब्लॉक कर दिया गया था। तो हालात बहुत ज्यादा कल खराब थे। और ये जो हालात हैं, ये जो खतरनाक सिचुएशन है, ऐसा नहीं कि वो अब खत्म हो गई है, ये खतरा और ज्यादा बढ़ता जाएगा आने वाले समय में, क्योंकि मौसम विभाग की ओर से अलर्ट ये जारी कर दिया गया है कि अगले 24 घंटे बहुत ज्यादा खतरनाक रहने वाले हैं। यहाँ पर आप तबाही के निशान देख रहे हैं कि किस तरीके से तबाही के निशान दिखाई दे रहे हैं। ये गेट देखिए, ये गेट अपने टूट चुका है। गेट का ये जो हिस्सा है पानी अपने साथ बहा कर ले गया है। अंदर आएंगे, अंदर आपको दिखाने की कोशिश करेंगे कि और क्या कुछ हालात है। देखिए पानी, क्योंकि हमने बताया था कि ऊपर छत तक भरा हुआ था और ऐसे में ये जो आप सिल्ट देख रहे हैं, इस सिल्ट में नंदी महाराज पूरी तरीके से डूब गए थे। और ये जो घंटी है, ये भी कुछ हद तक इस सिल्ट में फंसी हुई थी। ये घंटी सोचिए हम इसे खड़े होकर बजाते हैं, लेकिन यहाँ पर बैठ कर बजाना पड़ रहा है। और आगे बढ़ेंगे, मंदिर दिखाने की कोशिश करेंगे। स्तंभ देखिए आप, स्तंभ भी पूरी तरीके से डूबे हुए दिखाई दे रहे हैं। और ये स्थिति आज दोबारा बन सकती है, क्योंकि पंडोह डैम के गेट आज भी खोले जा सकते हैं।
इस वक्त मैं मौजूद हूँ अंबाला कैंट की शास्त्री कॉलोनी में और हालात क्या है तस्वीरें खुद बयां करेंगी। आप देखिए कि कम यहाँ पर पानी काफ़ी ज़्यादा है। आगे अगर हम जाएंगे तो कमर तक पानी है, अभी घुटनों तक पानी है। और यहाँ पर लोगों को दिक्कतें भी हो रही हैं। कुछ बच्चे हमारे साथ मौजूद हैं जो पानी लेने आए हैं। क्या दिक्कतें हैं?
पानी नहीं आ रहा, घरों के अंदर पानी है, कुछ भी नहीं हो पा रहा है, खाना भी नहीं बना पा रहे हैं, सामान डूब गया, घर डूब गया, बस पानी के लिए दूर जाना पड़ रहा है। पानी
हमारे घर में बेड डूबा हुआ है, सारा सामान ऊपर रखना पड़ रहा है, फिर भी घर भी टपक रहा है, पर फिर भी डूबे जा रहा सामान। पानी बढ़ते से बढ़ते ही जा रहा है, रखे का सामान खराब ही हो गया सारे।
जहाँ तक मेरे सहयोगी चंदन आपको तस्वीरें दिखाएंगे, सिर्फ पानी ही पानी नज़र आ रहा है। और ये लोगों को आप देख सकते हैं कि किस तरीके से यहाँ पर वो लोग अपनी मंजिल तय कर रहे हैं, जिनका घरों से निकलना बहुत ज़रूरी है। तो यहाँ पर देखिए कि लोग कह रहे हैं उनका घर डूब गया है, उनका सामान पूरी तरीके से ख़राब हो चुका है, लेकिन पानी कम नहीं हो रहा है। और अगर बारिश होगी तो इनकी दिक्कतें और पेश होंगी। और दूसरी तरफ मेरे सहयोगी चंदन आपको दिखाएंगे, देखिए किस तरीके से लोगों को जैम से भी दो चार होना पड़ रहा है। तो ये आप देखिए कि एक तरफ तो पानी की मार है ही, दूसरी तरफ जो लोग निकले हैं वो अपनी मंजिल तक कब पहुंच पाएंगे लोगों को मालूम नहीं है।
बीते 2 दिन से हर तरफ तबाही है, हर तरफ पानी पानी है। और पानी कुछ ऐसा कि हिमाचल प्रदेश में तो कई जगह पर पहाड़ दरक कर नीचे आ गए हैं, जिसकी वजह से अब उसका असर लोगों के जीवन पर पड़ रहा है। ये तस्वीर आप देखिए, आप यहाँ पर देख पाएंगे कि ये चंडीगढ़ मनाली कुल्लू हाईवे है और ये हाईवे तकरीबन 3 दिन से बंद पड़ा है। और इसके पीछे की वजह यह है कि इस पूरे हाईवे पर 2 से 4 किलोमीटर के अंतराल पर कई जगह पर बड़े बड़ी पहाड़ और चट्टानें दरक कर नीचे आई हैं। अब तस्वीरें देखेंगे तो समझ पाएंगे कितना ऊंचा ये पहाड़ था और यहाँ से एक पहाड़ का बड़ा हिस्सा, चट्टानों का बड़ा हिस्सा दरक कर नीचे आया, खिसक कर नीचे आया। भूस्खलन हुआ क्योंकि लगातार 2 से 3 दिन से लगातार तेज बारिश हो रही थी। और अब यहाँ पर 3 दिन के होने के बावजूद भी ये बताया जा रहा है कि रविवार दोपहर के बाद ये यहाँ पर भूस्खलन हुआ था। उसके बाद से यहाँ पर इस पहाड़ को हटाने की कोशिश की जा रही है। और आप पीछे देखेंगे तो 2 जेसीबी मशीनें यहाँ पर मशीनें लगी हुई हैं। और अब कोशिश यहाँ पर यह है कि जो बड़ी बड़ी चट्टानें हैं उनको यहाँ पर ब्यास नदी में नीचे गिराया जाए, क्योंकि पहाड़ को हटाने में, टूटी हुई चट्टानों को हटाने में काफ़ी ज़्यादा समय लग चुका है। और अब राष्ट्रीय राजमार्ग को खोलना भी है। ऐसे में कोशिश यहाँ पर यह है कि किसी भी हाल में यहाँ से चट्टानों को हटाया जाए। और इसके पीछे ऐसे 3 से 4 और ऐसे हिस्से हैं जहाँ पर बड़ी बड़ी चट्टानें ऊपर से खिसक कर नीचे आ गई हैं, जिसकी वजह से नेशनल हाईवे जो चंडीगढ़ को कुल्लू मनाली से जोड़ता है वो ठप पड़ा हुआ है।
वहाँ मौजूद है जहां सबकी नजरें पंजाब में डेरा बस्सी के गुलमोहर एक्सटेंशन सोसाइटी में। आपको तस्वीरें दिखाएंगे, ये बोट है, बोट के जरिए लोगों को मदद लेनी पड़ रही है अपनी दिनचर्या को पूरा करने में। हम आपको अंदर सोसाइटी के अंदर ले चलेंगे और दिखाएंगे। ये 2 से 3 फुट पानी अभी लगा हुआ है, कल 6 से 7 फीट पानी था। और सोसाइटी के अंदर चलते और आपको दिखाते हैं कि क्या स्थिति है। हम और अपने कैमरा पर्सन चमन के साथ आपको दिखाएंगे कि स्थिति क्या है आगे की। ये देख सकते हैं गाड़ियां डूबी हुई हैं, चमन शॉट्स दिखाई। और अब आपको अंदर दिखाते हैं सोसाइटी के अंदर 6 से 7 फीट पानी कल लगा हुआ था। और कल हम अगर खुद आते, बिना बोट के आते, तो अंदर पानी के अंदर जा नहीं सकते थे, क्योंकि 6 फुट से अधिक पानी जमा था और लोग बड़ी मुश्किल से आगे जा पा रहे थे। आप तस्वीरें देख सकते हैं, गाड़ियां डूबी हुई हैं, 4 पहिया वाहन डूबे हुए हैं। अधिक पानी, गाड़ी जो आपको दिख रही है उससे अधिक पानी जो है वो लगा हुआ था। ये देख सकते हैं, ये गाड़ी जो आपको दिख रही है ये डूबी हुई थी पूरी की पूरी। कल ये गाड़ी डूबी हुई थी और आप अगर अंदर प्रवेश करते, हम आना चाहते तो आ नहीं सकते थे। लोग बोट के जरिए अंदर जा रहे हैं, अपनी दिनचर्या को पूरा कर रहे हैं। अंदर की तस्वीरें आप देख सकते हैं, आपको कैमरा पर्सन चमन ऊपर आप देख सकते हैं। लोग, कई लोग ऐसे हैं कि 3 से 4 दिनों से अंदर ही फंसे पड़े हैं। लोग किसी तरह बोट से अंदर जा तो रहे हैं, लेकिन लोगों को बहुत मुश्किल हो रहा है। आप बताइए, आप बोट के जरिए, कल 6 से 7 फीट पानी था, कैसे अपनी रोजमर्रा की चीजें पूरी कर रहे हैं?
कल कम से कम यहाँ पे 11 फीट पानी था और पानी की इस टाइम बहुत किल्लत है। दूध की, बच्चे छोटे हैं, ना खाना है खाने को, ना कुछ है। बहुत औखा सर्वाइव कर रहे हैं, बहुत मुश्किल से सर्वाइव कर रहे हैं। ना पानी पहुंचाया जा रहा है। अभी पर्सनल टैंक मंगवाए हैं, अब पहुंचेंगे तो उसके बाद देखेंगे।
बोट किसने मुहैया करा है? प्रशासन।
हाँ, प्रशासन ने कराई है।
हाँ, ठीक है। तो आप लोग को तो बहुत मुश्किल हो रहा होगा, बोट चलाने के लिए किसी को दिया है?
हाँ, बंदे आए थे हमारे हेल्प करने के लिए।
If we talk about comparing it to yesterday, so today the situation is far better from yesterday, because yesterday several routes been diverted in Chandigarh. If we talk about sector 43, where Chandigarh bus stand is situated, sector 42, else then sector 23 and 24 Chowk, Sukhna Lake area, then the colonies that been made near the Sukhna Lake or the Dhanas area where the dumping ground is situated of Chandigarh. So that major area been affected, and right now here at near Sukhna Lake, where floodgates been opened yesterday, and you can see the effect. It's from here, the level, the road I am showing, from the level of the road, the flood water was 15 to 20 feet above. So you can imagine its effect, and now people been suggested to stay away from this sort of area, but the water level been decreased from yesterday, because till today early morning the water was seen, the flooded water was seen, which was on the road, and also you can see the trees, all the things been damaged, as near areas of this particular Sukhna Lake the flooded water has entered the homes, and 4 to 5 feet water has entered, and the things of the people, the houses been affected by the flooded water.
बाढ़ और बारिश ने पूरे देश में हाहाकार मचाया हुआ है। पहाड़ों से लेकर मैदानी इलाकों तक बारिश जमकर कहर बरपा रखी है। और इसी बीच न्यूज 18 इंडिया की टीम पहुंच चुकी है हरियाणा के अंबाला कैंट, जहां मेरे आसपास की तस्वीरें आप देख सकते हैं कि आखिर पानी का लेवल जो है वो किस तरीके से बढ़ता ही जा रहा है। फिलहाल पानी जो है वो घुटनों से ऊपर तक पहुंच गया है, लेकिन आप ऐसे में समझिए कि रुका हुआ पानी नहीं है, ये चलता हुआ पानी है। यानी कि इस पानी का प्रेशर जो है, जहां पर आप इस पानी का अगर ओरिजिन देखेंगे, जहां पर मैं खड़ी हूं, तो आप ऐसे में समझ सकते हैं कि पानी जो है वो रुका हुआ नहीं है, ये लगातार पानी चल रहा है, और इसी वजह से जो है इसका प्रेशर बढ़ता ही जा रहा है। हालांकि धूप बहुत कड़ी है, तो उस हिसाब से पानी सूखना चाहिए था, लेकिन पानी तब सूखेगा जब एक तरफ मौजूद होगा, एक तरफ रुका हुआ होगा, और यही वजह है कि ये पानी लगातार बढ़ता जा रहा है। लेकिन आप मेरे पीछे की तस्वीरें देखिए, जहां पर देखिए किस तरीके से ट्रक जो है वो पूरी तरीके से डूब चुके हैं। हालांकि ये ट्रक यहाँ पे 4 दिन से खड़े हुए हैं, क्योंकि 4 दिन पहले जब यहाँ पर हालात बद से बदतर हुए, बारिश लगातार हो रही थी, इसके बाद यहाँ पे जो टायर थे वो पूरी तरीके से ट्रकों के थम गए थे। यहाँ की भी आप तस्वीरें देखेंगे, पूरे के पूरे टायर जो हैं वो डूबे हुए हैं, जिस वजह से लोगों को परेशानी हो रही है। लेकिन आपको एक और तस्वीर आपको दिखाती हूँ जो कहीं ना कहीं आपका दिल पसीज देगी, क्योंकि जो 4 दिन से यहाँ पर ट्रक ड्राइवर फंसे हुए थे, वो उनकी स्थिति जो है वो किस तरीके से बद से बदतर होती जा रही है। देखिए एक फोल्डिंग आपको यहाँ पर नजर आ रही होगी। ये ट्रक ड्राइवर जो है वो यहाँ पर काफी दिनों से मौजूद है, करीबन 3 से 4 दिन का वक्त हो चुका है, लेकिन अब इनके पास और कोई जो है चारा मौजूद नहीं है कि आखिर किस तरीके से वो खाना बनाए, किस तरीके से जो है वो अपना जीवन यापन यहाँ पर कर सके। लेकिन वो कोशिश ये कर रहे हैं कि किसी भी तरीके से जो है, देखिए कैसे फोल्डिंग के ऊपर एक सिलेंडर रखकर जो है वो खाना बनाया जा रहा है। चाहे खाने की बात करें, चाय की बात करें, तमाम चीज़ों की परेशानी हो रही है। इसी फोल्डिंग पर जो है सब कुछ किया जा रहा है, सोया जा रहा है।
क्या आप चाहते हैं ये जो बाढ़ और बारिश की वजह से जो नुकसान हुआ है उसको मद्देनजर रखते हुए कुछ इमरजेंसी टाइप डिक्लेयर किया जाना चाहिए वहाँ पे हिमाचल प्रदेश में?
देखिए पिछले कल देश के प्रधानमंत्री जी का फोन आया था। उन्होंने हर संभव आर्थिक सहायता की बात की है। आज सुबह मेरी नितिन गडकरी जी से बात हुई है। जो NHI में जो हमारे डैमेज हुआ है उस संदर्भ में उन्होंने कहा कि हम पूरी आपकी सहायता करेंगे, और हमारे सरकार के सभी मंत्रिमंडल के जो हमारे सहयोगी है सभी डिस्ट्रिक्ट हेडक्वार्टर्स में बैठकर पूरा राहत कार्य देख रहे हैं। ये पहली बार हुआ कि 8 घंटे के अंदर हमने 15,000 पर्यटकों को मनाली और से निकाला है, और कल शाम तक हमें उम्मीद है कि हम सब पर्यटक जो फंसे हुए हैं, अब हमारा दायित्व ये है कि उन सब को निकाल कर अपने घर भेजा जाए जो 3-4 दिन से फंसे हैं। हम उन सब उनको निकालने की पूरी कोशिश करें।
सुखविंदर सुक्खू, चीफ मिनिस्टर ऑफ हिमाचल प्रदेश, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद हमारे साथ जुड़ने के लिए। So that is the chief minister saying that his estimate is hundreds of crores of damage. The main thing is the Kullu Manali highway, which one part of it has now been opened. He's hopeful that if it doesn't rain between now and morning, that both lanes will be open. We'll see how that plays out. Meanwhile, like I said, it's not just Himachal Pradesh. Kashmir has been affected. Uttarakhand has been affected. Punjab, Haryana, Delhi, all of them are badly hit in this bout of rains. We leave you with ground reports from the worst hit areas across the length and breadth of North India, large parts of which have been badly affected by this round of rains.
Due to excessive rainfall in Himachal Pradesh, uncalculated damage is taking place, and there's another spot in Shimla district's Jubbal Tehsil, which I'm showing you right now. And in fact, the spot where I'm reporting from, it also seems to be very, very dangerous. I would request my camera person to just show some cautions here. You can see how this entire stretch of the road is completely collapsed. And in fact, this is a main road which is heading towards the main market of Jubbal. In fact, on that side, you can see this building is in a very, very dangerous spot because the collapse has happened on the wall of this building, and this is due to the excessive rainfall which happened in the entire state for last 4 days. Even as I speak, the rain has stopped for a while, but damage is not calculated as of now. The state administration is saying that more than
Ajit Pawar says it that Sharad Pawar has always been wanting to go with the BJP, and discussions have been held for a very long time.
Sharad Pawar keeps everybody guessing about his real motives and intentions. Why is this brazen violation, 13,200 people missing, nothing's been asked, enforced disappearance?
But who's got the guts कि बिल्ली के गले में घंटी कौन बांधेगा?
Woman happens to be a Muslim, she gets 1/8 property. A Christian gets 1/4 property, and a Hindu gets half property. That's also unequal. That's also violative of fundamental rights.
Himachal Pradesh. So this is the situation. This is the ground situation here, which we are bringing to you from Shimla district of Himachal Pradesh.
The death toll has now crossed 70 in the hill state of Himachal Pradesh. Streets are waterlogged, highways are jammed because of landslides, and many bridges have been washed away. The army and the NDRF have ramped up relief and rescue operations. Prime Minister Modi took stock of the situation, held talks with the Chief Ministers of Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand. He's also assured all possible help from the centre. So joining us now is Sukhwinder Sukhu, who is the Chief Minister of Himachal Pradesh. बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद हमारे साथ जुड़ने के लिए. अभी हिमाचल प्रदेश में क्या हालात हैं, कौन-कौन से जिले जो सबसे अफेक्टेड है, और ये भी बता दीजिए कि फिलहाल स्थिति क्या है बाढ़ और बारिश की वजह से, क्या स्थिति है ऑन ग्राउंड पर, खासकर ये जो कुल्लू मनाली जो हाईवे है उसमें क्या स्थिति है?
मनाली का यातायात को खोल दिया है. बारिश रुके सिर्फ 8 घंटे हुए हैं. 8 घंटों में हमने जितने स्लाइड थे उनको हटा दिया गया है और ट्रैफिक को वन वे कर दिया गया है. यानी कि ट्रैफिक जो है मनाली से चंडीगढ़ की तरफ जाने के लिए खोल दिया गया है और मनाली की तरफ आने के लिए अभी हमने ट्रैफिक को रोक दिया है, ताकि जितने भी गाड़ियां 5000 के करीब गाड़ियां हैं, ट्रेवल्स है, बोलो बसेस है, उनको अतिशीघ्र चंडीगढ़ की तरफ भेजा जाए. तो उस दृष्टिकोण से मैं खुद उसका जायजा ले रहा हूं. और अभी हमारा जो ओट के पास था वहां से 2500 गाड़ियों को भी निकाल लिया गया है. और जो कसोल में है उसमें आज शाम तक उस रास्ते को हम खोलने की कोशिश करेंगे. मैं कह सकता हूं कि जितना अगर बारिश नहीं हुई तो कल तक हम सारे पर्यटकों को उनके घर तक पहुंचाने में पूरी सहायता करेंगे.
सुखू जी, ये भी बता दीजिए कि कितना नुकसान हुआ है दोनों तरफ से, आदमी को भी और प्रॉपर्टी को भी कितना नुकसान हुआ है? क्या आपकी सरकार के पास कुछ अंदाजा है, कुछ एस्टिमेट है कि कितना नुकसान हुआ है?
देखिए, 50 साल बाद बारिश ने ऐसा कहर ढाया है. एक प्रदेश के सभी जिलों में एक समान बारिश हुई है. पंजाब के साथ लगता ऊना इलाका है, वहां पुल पूरी तरह नष्ट हो रहे हैं. बद्दी के साथ चंडीगढ़ लगता है, वहां
A very warm welcome. You're watching Breaking on News 18. I'm Akanksha Swaroop. Let's dive into the segment. We have some breaking inputs coming in as far as the Congress party is concerned. Now, the Congress has claimed vindication after the Supreme Court's order that struck down the extensions given to the ED chief as illegal. And Congress leader Surjewala has taken to Twitter and said that this is a victory of justice. This is a vindication of our stand on brazen misuse and compromise of ED for political vendetta by the Modi government for targeting political opponents as also businessmen to spread terror. Now, Surjewala has further said that ED has lost all credibility except as a puppet in the hands of BJP government for settling personal scores, tarnishing democracy and to bring down elected governments. A big news coming in as far as the Supreme Court order is concerned. The Congress government, of course, has claimed that this is an indictment of the Modi government. For more details, let's quickly go across to Pallavi Ghosh, who's joining me on the phone line. Pallavi, going by what the Supreme Court order has to say, that all actions taken by the ED after 17th of November 2021 become illegal, null and void. What does this mean now? Is the Congress also demanding an independent investigation?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Both the Trinamool Congress as well as the Congress party, and particularly Randeep Surjewala, who had moved that petition in the Supreme Court, is actually claiming victory. As we all know, the ED and the opposition parties have a very uneasy equation, with the opposition parties often accusing the ED of being misused by the central government to target their political opponents. So in this, of course, they are sniffing victory, and that's the point that they are making, that we stand vindicated. We have raised this issue in the courts, and the court has taken cognizance of that. And therefore, there should be an apology which should definitely come in from the central government. And more importantly, many of the steps which are taken by the Enforcement Directorate, particularly as far as the opposition party members are concerned, that should become now null and void.
At the same time, Pallavi, Surjewala has said that we had hoped that the Supreme Court would strike down the law which allows such abuses of the process to take place. But for now, the Supreme Court has let it stand. Could you throw more light on what is the law that he's talking about?
He's basically talking about this whole system of the extension of the tenure which was given to ED and something which is there in the hands of the central government. The government can decide on the appointment of the ED director and in fact also overcome and bypass any voice of dissent, which in this case did come in from Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary and Mr. Mallikarjun Kharge because they're the leader of the opposition. And that's the point that they're making is that there has to be a complete consensus whenever their appointment of these sensitive designations are concerned. That is what they were hoping that the Supreme Court would intervene on that, but the Supreme Court clearly hasn't completely. But for now, whatever measure which has been pointed out that the CBI director the ED director can only be in office till 31st of July. That is being seen as a win-win as far as opposition parties are concerned.
All right. In fact, Pallavi, I'm going to request you to continue staying with us because next story will also need your inputs. And we have some breaking inputs with regards to the GST. There has been a proposed 28% GST implementation on online gaming, including lottery, casino, horse racing, but the Government and Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman made it amply clear that this would not hurt the industry and that the attempt is not to shut down or hurt the gaming industry. In fact, she says that states like Sikkim and Goa depend on these apps and games for their economy and revenue. The government does not plan to even restrict or discourage these games. This would need amendment in the GST Act, which the government will do soon. Let's quickly go back to Pallavi. Pallavi, but the question still remains, how will the gaming industry be impacted by this 28% GST proposal?
Well, I mean, 28% is a huge GST which is going to be applied. And that's not just on gaming apps, but simple things like lottery, as far as, the horse racing is concerned, casinos are concerned. And when this question was specifically asked of the finance minister, are you trying to curtail or discourage this kind of an industry? She said it very categorically that there are states like Sikkim and Goa which depend on this. So we don't want to curtail it, we don't want to discourage, but we also want to make them taxable. That's essentially what is happening. They come under a tax net, which means the GST 28% will now be applicable on them.
Right. At the same time, Pallavi, important to differentiate that the finance minister, in fact, the entire finance ministry is of the view that there should be no differentiation when it comes to earnings, whether from games of skill or whether of games of chance.
Yes. And in fact, for a specific question, the finance minister made it very clear that whether it's casinos, whether they are lotteries, whether they are horse racing, we do not consider them to be illegal activities. We also don't think that they should be checked or discouraged because we also acknowledge the fact that there are certain states which earn their income from them. And she specifically mentioned as an example Goa as well as Sikkim. But we also cannot have a situation that they cannot be taxed. So they have to be brought under a GST purview, which means the earnings which the particular state gets in or whichever industry or whichever vendor is there, they will have to pass on a part of it to the central government or to a state government, as the case may be, by virtue of the 28% GST. But I think with this announcement of the GST net on them, it's also an acknowledgement by the central government. And she said that. It's an acknowledgement by the central government that these are those apps which are very much here to stay. They are illegal, perfectly legitimate, and they are important for the economic growth story of small states like Goa as well as Sikkim.
Absolutely. And what remains interesting is the fact that the finance ministry has made it amply clear that they do not want to end the gaming industry. We'll have to leave this conversation at that. Many thanks to you, Pallavi, for sharing those precious inputs. In fact, there's some disturbing news coming in about 120 Israelis who may be stranded due to recent rains and flooding in northeastern states of India. This according to Israel's foreign ministry, according to Israel's consulate in New Delhi. The problem comes primarily from damaged communications infrastructure and lack of reception. The foreign ministry, along with other actors on the ground, are undertaking efforts to reach the travelers. This as has been confirmed by the foreign ministry of Israel. For more details, our international news correspondent Abhishek Jha joins me on the phone line. Abhishek, we do believe that the communication has been significantly hampered due to the rain fury and the floods lashing the state. But what are we learning so far as these Israelis are concerned?
So far, about 120, in fact, more than some of the local media reports in Israel suggest that about be very well stranded in these states, especially in Himachal, the upper areas. Manali happens to be one of the hot spots of Israeli tourists, and a lot of Israelis, youngsters come there to spend time. For weeks they come, and this used to be the peak touristic season. And the sudden flash flood that has almost disconnected entire Himachal Pradesh and its various smaller pockets to the main road and highways, communication